Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, wherever you are in the world, and welcome back to another episode of Endurance Chat. I'm Michael Zalavari, and joining me today I have Cookie Monster FL, Austin Zetzman, and Kris Rosso 97. Good afternoon, lads. Well, good evening for you guys.
Good morning, mate.
How have you been?
Well, been doing well. It's been a while.
It has been a while. It's been 2 months.
How about you, Kris?
Well, I mean, 2 whole IMSA races have passed, and 1 ELMS race, the WEC race. It's been a while. We've been slacking, a lack of work ethic here, but don't worry, we're gonna pick things back up.
Maybe that's you that's just been slacking, Kris. Life has been hard.
Oh, that's what
Oh, no.
You're throwing around, bud.
Yeah, we're throwing knives early. All right.
Classic. No,
I'll prepare myself.
Everyone, get your hands up and ready. We're going on guard. No, it's been super hard to organize everyone together in the same space at the same time. So it's been a little while. So we're trying. We're doing our best, and life just does that thing where it gets in the way. But part of that life has also been going to races for Cookie. Austin, tell us about Sebring. How was it? How was the fanfare, the experience? Did you know that your campsite was on the WEC backstage pass thing, access all areas that they're doing?
I didn't until you showed me in a wonderful display of insider knowledge when these videos come out. Because I don't know. I think I was even preparing myself to watch these because I think we had posts about them on the subreddit about them doing these all access stuff, but I didn't realize that they were going to be doing it about Green Park. And yeah, I guess there was some footage of our campsite on there, and then I think they used like some footage of like 2019, but me being on turn 10. But then they interviewed some friends of mine that are in turn 10. That was really cool, and so it was another awesome year. Had kind of everything again, but it would if it's Super Sebring.
Yeah, absolutely. So next year when they do the same thing again, you're going to get on the access all areas. You're going to be interviewed. And you're going to tell spread the word about the good people at r/WEC, right?
That's if they use any footage of mine, because again, remember, I'm the most long-winded person in known to man. So their ability to use actual sentences of mine would be very hard pressed, I should say. So. Yeah, but no, it was crazy. There was just like, again, it's just Sebring craziness, just things that it's just like, of course that's Sebring, and then it's also like things like, of course it's Sebring, but what the hell, what the expletive, or to that effect, because there was some really weird stuff that was there this year in the infield.
So you've sent through some photos to both of us and in the podcast chat. One of them, the first one, is you guys at Group 10, Turn 10, hanging out with Jackie X. That means that you've hung out with like both parts of the Porsche 962 dynasty over the past few years, with like Derek Bell at the supermarket and now Jackie X at Turn 10.
Yeah, it's crazy. I keep winning multiple Le Mans winners, except for Tom Christensen, who decided to meet every single person that I know that goes to Sebring, except me, because I decided to take a nap at like 10 p.m. at night. So that'll always haunt me. But yeah, I have now met Jackie X and Derek Bell. Jackie, I guess, hadn't been to the track since he last won in 1970. What was it, 2?
Jeez, yeah.
I believe, or 1970 with Mario Andretti, I think. Or not, yeah, that would be 70. But yeah, he hadn't been back to the track since then, so it was like 52 years or something like that. It was crazy.
Jeez.
But yeah, they, I don't know, they were just shuttling him around to different parts of the track to watch the infield. I think there was a practice or qualifying session for IMSA or something like that going on, so he was just kind of walking around, and then he went into turn 10 and said hi there. So just turn 10 just has its status that everybody, if you have the opportunity to go to the infield, they always direct you to go there. So and we now are kind of camping so close to them that we just kind of end up being near them. And so it was a cool experience, especially because this is the first time I was on the fence, like camping on the fence this year. We've done it at Petite, and I've done it at Road America as well, but and I guess now at Daytona, sort of. But at Sebring, it's really cool, especially being by turn 10. There's some guys next to us as well that do old school like whiteboard with dry erase markers, and they do the whole race in terms of each class and the driver or the car numbers for each hour. And then on the bottom they have like just like blurbs for what's going on. So it's kind of just like a run sheet for the entire race.
Nice. That's really cool.
Yeah, and they have their whole like CB radio, like some ham radio thing where they basically can like tap into a bunch of the radios that are at the track radios. So they get a lot of the comms of the official radio comms. So it's really cool. Like they have this it's just this whole thing, and they've been here for like 45 50 years, and they just have been doing this for like the last 30, and they're just like kind of nerds like us, like racing nerds like us, but just a little bit older. And yeah, just to camp next to them, and they camp next to Turn 10, it kind of felt a little bit more community, and yeah, that was really neat. So yeah, I had a lot of fun this year.
Yeah, that's really cute. I do miss the whole camping community aspect of being at racetracks. It's something I haven't experienced for a while. And you were almost on the fence about not going this year. So happy days that you managed to get out there.
Yeah, a little lingering back injury always sometimes plays havoc with plans, but yeah, it was it was kind of a question of what day I would show up, and I decided to just try to tough it out and try to do the whole thing, and it was fine. So yeah, and it turned out all right. So there was a lot of people coming at least this year that were planning different stuff, and it kind of would have been a bummer if I wasn't there to like kind of help supply some of the requirements for him. Like a couple guys were flying in direct from Atlanta in just a Cessna, so they just flew into the airport and
at Sebring
International Airport. Yeah, and our buddy picked him up in an old 1982 BMW, like as an auto track or autocross car. It's I'm trying to remember what car it was, but it's like BMW coupe, like 1970 and 1982, something like that coupe. Gorgeous car. And he like shows up to the airport terminal at Sebring to pick him up and just wheel him another mile to get back to our campsite. But just it was super surreal. Like it was great. Yeah, it was super cool. My buddy's all into flying, and the first time that I camped with them in 2014, the guy that owns this BMW, he owned a twin, like a Twin King plane, so it's a little bit bigger than the Cessna, and he flew in with our buddy MJD More, down to Sebring, and he flew them around at the start. Like him, Marcus, my buddy, and MJD More flew around Sebring at the start. And so he's been like, I want to fly down to Sebring, like, and land there and do all that stuff. And he finally did it this year and said it was awesome. And his flight instructor that flew with him was like, dude, this is crazy. I want to do it again after like sleeping out in the tent or in our carport canopy thing.
Yeah,
because all of his stuff got soaked after a rainstorm. So he had nothing dry, and I had a zero gravity chair to kind of like lean back and you kind of sort of sleep on there. But like we're right next to a main walking path in Sebring, and he basically is just sleeping right next to the fence that separates our campsite from the walking path, then the fence to the racetrack. So like morning warm up and stuff, he's like 60, like 10, I'd say like 15 meters from the track, and he's just sleeping in a, like with a sort of a blanket on him, trying to sleep, and it's slightly foggy. He was just like, dude, that's the perfect christening of Sebring for him. So yeah, It was crazy. Yeah. It never fails to disappoint. There was a race car that was turned into a grill.
What?
There was beer taps. That was where the gas refill was. It was a NASCAR. It was like a Gen 3 NASCAR, and they ripped the engine out. Apparently, this might have been like a testing crash. It might have been Brad Keselowski's. No, I don't think it was that. But there was some crash at Road Atlanta, and it totaled the car. And so the guy was like, "Oh, I'll just make it into this weird grill thing." And so the entire front where the engine is just a huge grill. And then he's got like beer kegs in the trunk on ice, and then there's beer taps coming out where the gas intake is on the back of the rear fender. And on the passenger side, because he's left the driver's seat there, on the passenger side is an entire extra seat with a sim rig in it.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah,
that
and
is.
There's placement for beer pong cups and stuff on the front, like right in front of the windshield. I mean, it's the whole not like everything. And apparently that guy somehow nosed the guy at turn 10, and they were trying to get it to turn 10, but couldn't get past all the RVs and stuff because everybody was all bobbled in. So it was like right behind our campsite. So we were just like watching them grill and play in this race car. Excuse me. That's converted into like a Sebring.
A Sebring grill. Far out.
Yeah.
Holy shit!
It was crazy.
I need to go to Sebring.
Yeah, man. I'm sorry. We have to keep talking about other stuff, but we convinced a British guy that decided to come a week before to come back every single time because like he had no idea what was happening. He's just like, I decided to like buy a plane ticket to come to Sebring on a whim. Like I had the opportunity to do it, so I decided to do it and rented a car. Like went to Walmart, bought a bunch of stuff like a tent, like chair. Air mattress, cooler, and all that stuff, and basically just decided to wing it. And he camped near us, and like literally the first morning, I think it was Wednesday morning. He's like, and he has the biggest Cockney accent I've ever heard of a British person ever. And he's asked me where the washrooms are. And I'm like, oh, British guy, and he has no idea what's going on. This is gonna be great. So I like point him in the right direction. There's like they got old facilities you could use, but they got like a nice truck that they rent and bring in, and that was open. I was like, use that one, way better. And then I kept running into him, and so we just kind of introduced ourselves. I introduced him to Turn 10 and the British guys that are expats of the UK that live in Florida now. And I mean, he just had the grandest time. We took him to Magic Bus, got his cherry pop there. I mean, it's
what is Magic Bus?
Some guy converted a school bus into sort of a bar. You can just imagine like some of the seats are still left in that of like a school bus, American school bus, but then the other half of the seats on the other side are all gutted, and he's got like a bar kind of built out there on that side. That's the bar table. It's all just crappy, craftsmanship, just terrible.
That's part of the charm, right?
Yeah, and then he's got pictures. He's got pictures, like laminated on, or like lacquered on, whatever, onto the wood for the bar, and they're all just like naked breasts of women. So just terrible. But like that's the whole crazy charm. They're just insane guys. And then there's like they have a DJ kind of station in the back where they've got huge speakers that are playing music all at all hours of the night, and but yeah, and so if there's anybody that's never been in the Magic Bus before, they basically get like a wax little paper cup of cherries that are soaked in essentially there's got to be grain alcohol. Like it could be moonshine, but I'm pretty sure it's grain alcohol, and I think he's even said it once that it's grain alcohol. So it's just a vat of cherries and grain alcohol, and he just scoops some cherries up and then hands it to you. So you just eat grain alcohol soaked cherries. It's the nastiest thing ever, and you have to chase it, and the only thing he has is more liquor. So it's just the most unholy amalgamation of all kinds of alcohol and craziness, and it's wonderful.
America.
But you only go there if you are not sober.
Chris, yeah. Is that how you ended up in the back of another person's pickup when you went to Sebring?
So basically, it was Friday night, and I was basically I was treating myself to some those Captain and Cokes. It was just, and I went. So before that, I was basically abducted by this group of people. People from the south was like, "It's your first Sebring," and they took me around. I met a shirtless person dancing around with a box of wine. A DJ gave me a free Corona seltzer, tasted like crap. And then afterwards,
hold on. Box wine, for anybody who doesn't know, is very, very cheap wine, and because it's so cheap, they just put it in a plastic bag with like with a nozzle on it.
For any Australians in the audience, that would be a goon sack.
Okay, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
so you're drinking goon, which is disgusting, but continue.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I don't condone this either. I went to sleep, and I was like, and I should have been, I sort of feel bad because I probably should have been like, Kris, you need to stay in the campsite. But I was like, you know what? He's up, and I'm not going to stop him. He's got more energy than I do.
It's time for him to leave the nest, Cookie.
Yeah, it was. You know what? And again, I feel slightly proud, even though I feel ashamed.
And so basically, after all that, we met this woman is like, "Oh, I need to get out of here. They have a warrant out for my arrest." I was like, "What the hell?"
Jeez, that escalated quickly.
Oh yeah, that always happens. Always.
We took her to the exit, dropped her off, then they dropped me back to my campsite, and that was when Cookie was going to bed. This was like what, like midnight, like 11 o'clock.
It was like around. It was 11. I think it was 11.
11, yeah. And I think my exact words to Cookie, after making myself yet another Captain Cook, was, "I'm going to explore."
Yes. Oh no.
Yep.
And I met so basically, I went across the road, met up with another group of people. Then that was like the next 30 minutes, and then after that it's just all blacked out.
And then you woke up in the back of someone else's pickup the next day.
Yeah, and when I say back of pickup, I don't mean like the tailgate open portion towards the back. I was in the back seat.
Oh my god!
And it was like 6 a.m. And so, I had no idea where the hell I was. So basically I had to look up like Snap Maps, which is like the map on Snapchat for the app. I was like, "Oh, I'm in turn 7."
Oh my gosh. That is incredible. Okay, one more story from Sebring, then we should talk about racing. Cookie, you also sent us a photo of a champagne bottle, and then what is it? The inside of the podium club? Did you say it was?
Yeah.
You were just explaining that to us before we went live. Mm-hmm. Tell us what happened.
Indecisive Rock, who's on IMSA racing subreddit a bunch. He's been camping with us the last few years, and he likes to troll around the paddock to look for just discarded parts, like things in the trash, whatever. So he dumpster dives a bit, and especially in sports car paddocks, can be kind of beneficial. He found GTLM Ferrari brake rotors that were discarded at Daytona.
Wow!
So he has those. The GT4 crash at Sebring in the Michelin Pilot Sports Challenge series. He grabbed a bunch of pieces off that, and I have one of them. So it's like the bottom where the door, like the driver's side door where it closes, there's the underguard like body thing, like for the bottom of the door. That is, I have that because the car was basically destroyed, so just threw a bunch of shit out again because I keep swearing. So he just kept dumpster diving, and so I went with him Saturday evening. So this is basically like into the 12-hour race, and we ended up finding a bunch of stuff. Found the Alpine, we found. I think it is the winner's champagne bottle, and I believe it was because we were behind some crew members that had the same kind of bottle. And we had some interesting glances from them because we ended up finding a champagne bottle. And they had some uncorked ones. So it was kind of like, oh, we should trade. But I ended up getting some banners. Like there was some garage banners that they slide over the garages through the weekend when the team wants some privacy or whatever. They're like huge banners. Like we're talking meters tall and a lot of meters wide. And so we, because they're discarded and thrown out. I put a bunch of stickers that are on the pit lane road for the grid for the WC pre-race ceremonies and all that stuff. They have like stickers for all the entries, and so they were thrown out. So we grabbed those. The best part was we had passes for IMSA, Paddock Club, and WC. I think it was hospitality clubs and that kind of stuff that were discarded. They were just like in a couple envelopes that were like laying out in a box. So we just like, oh, okay, we'll grab those. And we got escorted to the IMSA Paddock Club, which is right at the start finish line, right on the right above, overlooking the pits. So all air conditioned, had some food, amazing food. Love the service, they're great. Shout out to the two guys serving us some food. I think one of those name was Mike, so appreciate that. And it was cool. They had a TV camera with all kinds of camera feeds on it, so some static feeds. I wish I could find out how to get access to that because it was really cool. It was like 16 feeds of a racetrack. That's like perfect for my ADHD brain.
Yeah, fair enough.
But yeah, it was really cool. I mean, and then we were able to kind of go on the gurney area, like the gurney overlook, which is like an access. It's like it overlooks. It's an open area that overlooks the pits, but it's at the ends of the big pit lane superstructure thing.
Yep.
So yeah, we just got to do a bunch of crazy stuff. Just kind of Sebring continues to be Sebring, which is always just intoxicating for me to keep going back every year. So,
dude, that's wild. That's like act like you belong sort of stuff.
Yeah, I mean it basically was. At that point, the pass was king. I mean, you could say like, oh, I'm this person. Oh, sorry, you don't have a pass, but it's fine, let you in. But like, if you got the pass, they're not really caring. And it was Saturday. I mean, like they had about like 3 hours left before anybody was even remotely caring about anything. Everybody was just going to pack up. So we kind of got in at the perfect time. But it would have been cool to find those maybe like Friday night or something after some of that was probably discarded, and then be able to spend most of Saturday just being like, oh, you know what? It's been hot. It's been hot all week. I've been sweating all week. I think I need a break and go in some air conditioning, get some food, and just pop in the IMSA Paddock Club to refresh yourself. So IMSA, you did a great job. As a person that was able to enjoy your services and will probably never again, gave it a thumbs up, maybe 2 thumbs up.
That is incredible. That is impeccable. My word.
Kind of reminds me, quick before we go. When I was at the Rolex in 2020, it was me, a British guy, and another American, all around the same. We're all around the same age. We were in like the grandstands, and towards the finish line portion of the tri-oval, they have like these open air, like I want to say like corporate, or not like corporate, but like basically better seats because they have like the leather chairs and stuff.
Yeah.
And the doors were unlocked, and we was like, oh, okay, we're just gonna go in then. And nobody was around to stop us. And since it was like 3 a.m., nobody cared.
That's
excellent.
Oh my gosh, I gotta go to American racetracks, man. That sounds incredible.
Yeah, the level of access is kind of ridiculous. And then just not even to mention the Creventic event, that was essentially a test day, or like a just an open track facility day, because that's how they did it. Everything was basically open access unless there was specifically like there was barriers that were blocking your access. That was it. You could just go anywhere.
Damn.
It was crazy. I loved the Creventic 24-hour race in November. That was even more nutty than Sebring is, and Sebring is still just in Daytona too. They're just you just act like you belong kind of stuff, and especially if you've been there enough, like all of the places that are like kind of more restricted access, or like what gets you where, and hey, sometimes it works in your favor. So it was fun.
That is awesome. That is super duper cool. I am glad you had a good time. Let's talk about some racing now, and we'll start with the first part of the Super Sebring weekend, the WEC race. It was planned to be 1,000 miles, but in the end, it turned out to be like 600 for a variety of reasons. We'll get into that in a second. But I've got to say, guys, the WEC field is gorgeous. Like, all the cars look fantastic. I got to particularly shout out the new color for the Jota cars, that like lighter shade of green. I think looks way better than the super dark green. But even the GT field, like we've seen the Aston Martins with that kind of vomit yellow color. Now the 98 has that like cool sort of kaleidoscope coloring with the blue mixed into that as well. The field looks gorgeous. What's your favorite car livery at the moment, guys?
I think for nostalgia reasons, I like the Penske one.
The straight yellow.
Yep, because if you don't know American racing, Penske, they use that livery, sometimes for IndyCar. I know specifically in 2006 they used that to sponsor Kurt Busch for the NASCAR Busch Series. So I mean, obviously I was a child back then, so that scheme that was in the back of my mind. And it was kind of nice seeing that scheme back out on track.
Beautiful. The nostalgia of seeing an old livery on track is sometimes just hits right in the right spot. Cookie, what about you?
I don't know. I wasn't really paying too much attention to liveries.
Classic Cookie.
I was just doing it to identify the cars, but I don't know. I mean, like, Yeah, it was very colorful. I didn't note that. There's a lot of color in the grid, which is nice. I'm not seeing white, red, and black everywhere.
Yes,
so.
Indeed. The old FIA mandated colors for LMP1,
except for where it counts, which is Gazoo.
Except they were the ones that made it like all when they were blue and red. LMP1 was just different, man. Once they changed,
I mean, this weekend Toyota definitely hit some blue.
Well, do we want to start there then? Do we want to start with Toyota's LMP1 race and the crash and the red flag?
I mean, we should start with LMP1, which that was definitely a big part of it.
Yeah. So of course, LMP1. We're going through this process again of the second year of the grandfathered. Well, sorry. LMH, we're going through the second year of the grandfathered LMP1 with Alpine. Last year, we saw the issue wherein the Alpine was okay on pace. It was in the same realm of pace with the LMH cars, but had nothing to fight with for the fuel length, or the stint length. This year at Sebring, it looks like the Alpine was given quite a bit more pace, and it very much offset the fuel... the lack of fuel, the shorter stint times, to the point where it looked as if the Alpine was in a bit of a different class. Obviously, they got helped with the race stoppages and the shortening of the race, which meant that their fuel, their stint length disadvantage wasn't exemplified over the course of the race. But, Kris, your thoughts, was the Alpine in a different class over the course of the Sebring 8 hours?
Well, I think it really helped because I believe they had a safety car pretty early on, or full course yellow. I can't remember which one. So though I would say those definitely really helped the Alpine. So obviously I don't believe they did BOP changes for Spa yet. I would assume Alpine will probably get a little bit of a peg down. But I think if we didn't have as much of those race stoppages, we would have probably seen it more play out with Toyota having the longer stint lengths. But due to the fact, we had those race stoppages, Alpine could have a little bit more, free stops to prevent the, Toyota clamping down on them. It obviously didn't help with, the Jose Maria Lopez crash.
Yeah, and that was quite a significant interruption. I think it ended up being 40 minutes or something along those lines. And it also kind of ruined the other Toyota's race as well, because they had to come in and take emergency service when the race got restarted, which then dropped them to the back of the queue. So it was a bunch of things that went wrong for Toyota. Cookie, is this Toyota's worst race from a strategy and logistics standpoint since joining the WEC? It just seems like everything they tried to do went wrong.
The car doesn't seem really happy at Sebring either for them. I don't know. They've looked better with the other car here, but at the same time too, I feel like the way that it's happening is that they're still handicapped pretty hard by the Glickenhaus being just off the pace in terms of ultimate pace between the Alpine. I mean, let's just be honest.
The hybrid did get, for Toyota, the hybrid did get reduced.
They got nerfed, yeah.
They couldn't use the hybrid as much, so that was one of the other reasons.
The major change in the BOP for Toyota was that their hybrid activation speed was increased from 120 k's to 190 kilometers per hour, which basically means like out of all the slow corners, of which at Sebring there are a few, they don't get that same punch out of corners. That, of course, has a big effect on how they can process traffic. Do you think then maybe that's why Jose Maria Lopez had that incident with the number 88 Proton car? The fact that coming out of, it was turn 7 where they made contact. Do you think, being used to having that big punch out of corners, he was expecting to have already passed the car?
No, I just think it was a combination of that. They're behind the 8 ball in terms of ultimate pace. The setup probably, maybe tire wear was in their favor, but setup wise, like they probably weren't as comfortable as the Alpine, was. And yeah, I mean, he wasn't leading, and I don't think he was in second. Yeah, I just think that he was pushing hard to try to keep up with the front two, or at least his sister car. and just outbraked himself in turn 7, and ultimately, a GT car got around him. That might have maybe got to him a little bit, where he was like, that's annoying that he got around me and I gotta repass him. So thinking that maybe running him a little bit closer than he intended to, but it just looked like he just misjudged it. It looks like he kind of went, he kind of went with how the racetrack is laid out, keeping equal distance between both sides kind of thing. Whereas at that part of the track, you kind of start to transition from the right side to the left.
Yeah.
So he naturally just kind of crossed in front of the Porsche. I don't think he meant to, and he clearly just didn't know that the Porsche was still there. So I just thought it was just a misjudgment. And then the rest was also just a misjudgment. So, it was unfortunate.
Yeah, clearly. We'll talk about the second part of the crash in a moment. Kris, you're quite a fan of GT racing. What is the GT car meant to do in that situation? It's kind of hugging the right-hand side of the track, and then the faster class car moves over. At some point, the GT car has to turn into the turn 9 sweeper, right? But what options did, I think it was the 88 car. I can't remember who was behind the wheel, but what options does the driver have in that situation when the prototype is squeezing maybe a little too hard?
I believe it was Fred Pordad in that car during the accident. The simple answer is obviously, if you've been watching endurance racing long enough, is that slower car, it's the responsibility of the faster cars to pass, not for the slower cars to move over. So I guess if a little bit earlier, if you just be more predictable, just take your racing line. It was really tough, but I mean, it could also would have helped if JML was a little bit less aggressive after that, also, because I don't believe he was anywhere near a position overall, so he could have just took it easy and just probably made the pass on turn 10 and not have an issue at all.
Yeah, it looked a bit sort of, as Cookie put it, just inattentive. It seemed that he wasn't expecting the Porsche to be there. So it ended up, he collected the edge of the concrete and the tires with the front of the car, which was lucky that he didn't entirely get the concrete. But then, as we saw, the front of the car, the front splitter basically ended up underneath the front tires as he went into turn 10, turn 13 and 14, the pair of left-hand sweepers, and had that massive accident. First off, glad that he's okay. Secondly, I'm trying, the gears are turning in my head. How do I phrase this right? Was that the dumbest thing you've seen at Sebring?
Are we talking about on track or in the internet?
Let's keep it to on track.
It was. I don't think he knew that the front part of the bodywork was dragging underneath the car. But he was. I think he was still driving too fast. Because I think you saw the smoke in the onboards. I would have hoped he would have seen that, and maybe would have thought "Hey, maybe let's take it easy a bit." And I'm sure he had radio telling him the extent of the damages. So I don't know. From the outside looking in, driving that fast with a piece of lower front bodywork dragging underneath the car looked pretty dumb.
Yeah, I can certainly agree with that. I wonder if, because that run into turn 14, 15, that's the sort of fastest part of the track after turn 7. I wonder if that was just the first opportunity he really had to get up to speed, and then that's when the front kind of tucked in, and then at that point he was a passenger. Cookie, it was great though to see the response from the team, the response team, the fixing of the tire barriers, the fact that the tire barriers kept him off the concrete and back into the track bounds. Great work by the IMSA officials, and great work particularly by Eduardo as well to just immediately red flag the race after that. What were your thoughts on how that was handled and that whole process for Lopez?
I mean, they're sensible. certainly there could be better ways to have a barrier there and something more permanent to be a little bit more safe. But some of the, I'm not going to say some of the charm is the roughshod way it is, but part of the way that the track is that it's difficult to create a lot of extra safety margins without really modifying how the track is, or at least the layout of some of it. So yeah, I mean, from that aspect, I mean, it's not good to see a car to go in there, and we've seen prototypes for the last decade or so go in there and get some air, flip over sometimes. So that might be something to look at in terms of the TEFCO barriers or something else there to maybe try to prevent maybe cars getting up in the air, but at the same time that is dissipating energy. So
Yeah.
honestly, that's really the only thing I can think that's a problem. The red flag felt appropriate because the car was literally upside down, and yeah, the severity of the crash. So, and they got to reset the barriers. So, yeah, I mean, everything was appropriate. There was nothing really to complain about. Everything kind of got back going. It was tough luck for the other Toyota. That's just the way it goes. And just for it to be, it's ironic that it was their teammate that caused the even more worse luck for their sister car. But hey, it's a lot of what ifs, but I don't know. And I think the Jose Maria Lopez thing, like, I mean, sure, like this is definitely now chaining into more and more kind of like things you could point to be like, okay, well, he might be a weak point or, weak chain or link in that chain. But I don't know. I think it was just a bad judgment call to move over that quickly. But yeah, I sincerely think he just saw it as a tire rub. It probably looked like a tire rub, and the fact that the tire, I think, might have been moving still to him. Like, it didn't look down. It wasn't, deformed and deflated and stuff. So to him, it just looked like it might have been the front pushed in a little bit. So from that aspect, it's not going to really remove your ability to turn left until he got to a point where he needed to turn left and it didn't work. So yeah, I don't know. It was tough to watch as a Toyota fan, but at the same time, it's like that's racing. So yeah, that stuff will happen. But
and this red flag was when the TV director decided to be a little bit cheeky. Because they pointed the camera towards a nearby road and zoomed in at the orange road work ahead sign.
That was brilliant. I gotta say, that TV direction was very, very well done. You mentioned, Cookie, about Jose Maria Lopez and saying that this was sort of another incident that he's been involved in with traffic. And sure, every LMP1 driver and every LMH driver and every LMP2 driver and every higher class driver has had incidents in traffic. But it's something that seems to consistently happen with Lopez behind the wheel. What do you reckon is the reason for that? And is that a point of concern for Toyota Gazoo Racing, Cookie?
Potentially. I think right now they have a bit more of I don't know, not being untethered, but not having a ton of pressure on their performance. I mean, even if somehow Alpine win the championship this year, it's a tough sell for a lot of us to be like, hey, it's well earned, and you guys didn't win the Mall because it's going to be tough for them to win the Mall this year. Against Toyota. I mean, you never know, but especially with how the BOP is going and whatnot, because it's such a moving target, and with how the Glickenhaus is just weighing the Toyotas down, it's hard to be like, okay, Alpine's just really dominant this year.
Yeah.
So I think there's a little bit of relaxation with some of Toyota, that there is not this internal pressure to perform 100%. I mean, you want to be, and that's where you need to be for Peugeot coming in, but I get the feeling that it's not as, a lot of this stuff happening right now isn't as intense and must correct, must fix kind of things yet. I think if it starts to happen with Peugeot and then Ferrari and Porsche next year and everybody else, then I think we might start to see more problems. But I don't know. I think this is good. He's getting more, all these crashes or problems are making him a better driver, I think. So we'll see how much better he gets if he does.
Yeah, I hope so, because coming from a touring car background, it must be quite a difference having such slower cars on track that you have to navigate. moving on from that aspect, the red flag really destroyed the other Toyota's race in its challenge for the lead. It also played havoc with the Glickenhaus as well. They'd just taken a pit stop, I think, before the red flag came out and happened to be a lap down on the Alpine because of it. So unfortunately, they weren't able to get the wave around, and they kind of were stuck a lap down afterwards. Glickenhaus taking their first overall podium in the WEC, though. That's a pretty good achievement, but no one really had the pace to challenge the Alpine, and our good friend Oliver Trelivus did some great analysis on his sports car engineering blog that you should definitely check out, talking about the difference in the fuel tank, the difference in pace and the difference in the fuel tank, and basically it boils down to this. The 36 Alpine was about 0.15 seconds faster per kilometer than the Toyotas, as in, so per distance traveled. And for each kilometer, the number 36 spent 0.08 of a second servicing the car. So that kind of goes to show the fact that the Alpine was almost twice as fast as where it should have been in terms of keeping the field closely balanced. And he goes on to say that the Glickenhaus and the Toyota was actually pretty closely balanced. The difference was just when that Glickenhaus took its pit stop, and that kind of changed everything around. So looking towards the next round of the series at Spa. We're at Spa next, right? We're at Spa? Spa.
Yep. You're alive. You are alive. Yep.
What does the WEC need to do to equalize that sort of difference? Is it a matter of the fact that there was so many stoppages in the race that the Alpine was able to skip away and stay away, or is there something that the WEC needs to do to sort of peg the Alpine back a little bit?
To give or take. I think it's because it depends. If you're going to have a lot of safety cars, then obviously like pace difference is not, it's the same adage of like fuel mileage. If somehow the Alpine was way faster but used less fuel, and the Toyota just was naturally slower but used way less fuel. So, so there's going to be an ebb and flow of that, the advantage and disadvantage. So with BOP, the way it has to work right now is that the Toyota is just a naturally faster car. So you have to restrict the Toyota as best you can, and also buff the Alpine as best you can without making it dangerous, to allow the Alpine to be on the level with Toyota. And the problem is that in order for Alpine to be on the level of Toyota through the span of a simulated 6-hour, 12-hour, 24-hour, 10-hour race, the Alpine has to pretty much be the faster car in qualifying in the first maybe 2-3 laps or whatever, but then the pace has to come back to the Toyota. Maybe a little bit better fuel economy. So technically, that's where the Toyota should start making up time. Because I think if the Toyota and Alpine were evened up perfectly, like you had them run the exact same lap time, the Alpine is going to finish behind the Toyota just naturally because of traffic, and B, because I just think that it should lose its balance over the stint quicker than the Toyota should. That's at least my opinion.
And the Alpine will be hamstrung in that situation by its fuel economy, so it will have to come in and make more. But it should
look faster.
Yeah.
That's my point. It should look faster on paper, and it was too fast at Sebring, but really the perfect quote-unquote thing, without all the safety car and red flag shenanigans, would have the Alpine leading out front and probably pulling away a bit, and then having seen those Toyotas start to reel it back in. And that's really what we didn't see, and I think just because they had an advantage at Sebring over the Toyotas. So
yeah, and Sebring, of course, is a very different track to a lot of the other races we go to in the season, including Spa-Francorchamps. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out at Spa. We'll move on now to LMP2, and for me, LMP2 kind of got a little lost in the sauce. There was so much going on in the other classes that it was hard to kind of nail down. But what did get nailed down, though, was United Autosports with another win under their books. But it wasn't nearly as dominant as what we'd seen in the past from United. They ended up winning from the pair of WRT cars, which included one of the Pro-Am cars, I believe, the real team by WRT. But it didn't all go their own way. Kris, what did you glean from the LMP2 race?
I'm gonna be honest, like it kind of got lost in the sauce with me too.
Well, there you
Man,
go.
all you guys are lost in the sauce. Dang.
I remember it having a couple good battles. One thing I do want to point out is that with Josh Pearson in the United, I think he becomes the youngest ever winner in the WEC.
Dude is 17 or 16 or something. That's messed up.
Good.
I mean, he's good, but also like, what were you doing at 16, Cookie? How long ago was that? Was that like 15 years ago?
Oh man, this isn't a podcast about me feeling bad about myself. But yeah,
I'm sorry, Cookie.
no, I wasn't driving race cars. Dang it, damn it. But I don't know. Yeah, he's very talented, and I mean he could jump back over to open wheel and do that, but he could be a complete insane force to be reckoned with in sports car racing, especially with the dawn of a bunch of OEMs knocking on drivers' doors for contracts. So probably still too young for that, but he'll definitely be getting some glances from a lot of very important people.
And if United Autosports are in the market to be a factory team or a works team for an LMDH drive, then he'd be in the box seat for one of those as well.
A good PR. I mean, if he's super young but can handle it, to have him on the team. So, I mean, for LMP2, Prema and WRT, the two of them were kind of keeping the 22 honest a bit, but the 22 had the most laps led and all that. So. They had a good amount of the race to themselves a bit, but they definitely were challenged by WRT, and I don't know if I was surprised at all that Prema finished pretty well, but still I think Prema is gonna surprise people like WRT did and Duquesne did and all of those in the years past. They're very good.
And it looks like as well, it's not a foregone conclusion. We've kind of had this foregone conclusion sort of era in LMP2 where it was like, oh, G-Drive's going to win. Oh, no, United's going to win. Oh, no, WRT's going to win or Joda's going to win. And now even though United had the pace broadly throughout the race on Saturday, on Friday in Sebring, it wasn't all their own way. I've got to pretty well shout out Prema, the fact that they've come over and immediately on the pace in the mix and just outside the podium on their first event. Sure, it's not what WRT did, but it's still quite a solid result for them. And looking down the order as well, AF Corsa, the Perodo, Rivera, and Nielsen car took Pro-Am honours in that class as well, and that's a pretty good shot for them in terms of jumping back into the LMP2 class and doing well, isn't it?
Oh yeah, and all power to them. I mean, it's no easy feat to try to jump, especially into the International Series WC, which it touts itself as being the top flight sports cars championship. So, and just the difference between running ELMS or Asian Le Mans Series or IMSA versus the continent hopping that you're doing with this, like you're kind of like jumping onto a circus and riding that around the each continent for the entire calendar year instead of a lot of these regional series which stay in their region. So I mean, even that is an entirely different animal to try to organize your staff and crew to get all there. So especially for the first year, a lot of times you don't expect that. You don't expect the team to be gelling perfectly, and just to see so many of these teams to be able to just come in and world-class efforts and be able to show that world-class immediately is pretty incredible to watch. So,
and as well, just looking at I've not really paid attention too much to a lot of the things that came out of Sebring, but I'm just looking at the driver quality throughout the field in LMP2, and it's kind of scary just how good all the drivers are. It almost looks like a Formula 2 field and just how good the driving talent is across the whole class, which is kind of nuts.
Yeah, I mean, so many ex-Formula 2 or current Formula 2 or probably going to be Formula 2 drivers and stuff like that are that were in the field already.
Yeah.
Driving prototypes. So, yeah, I mean, the future looks bright for that, and it's necessary just for what we're about to start having happen the next couple of years for the sport. So it's great to see this amount of talent here and being able to showcase that on a race by race basis at this point.
Absolutely. We'll jump into GTE because there was a few things that were going on in GTE. Firstly, it was the Porsche number 92 team that took the win over the Corvette Racing number 64, their first run in the WEC as a full season entry. And then the second Porsche, the Ferraris, they were kind of nowhere. Is that, again, something to be talked about in the BOP, or just does Ferrari not match up with the Sebring circuit?
I think it's I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say because it's GTE. Because every single time I want to talk about, or my brain thinks Ferrari BOP, it immediately thinks about GT3 and how they're the benchmark for GT3 BOP. So I'm like, oh well, it's their chassis, they're the benchmark for BOP. But it's not really the case in GTE. So I don't know. I mean, I thought they were pretty good at Sebring in past, but maybe it's something with the setup, or just something with the drivers not feeling comfortable with the setup there. I mean, again, these are semi-new drivers for AF Corsa 2. This isn't stalwarts that we've seen for like 4 years in these AF Corsa cars, so there could be a little bit of just still needing to mesh, especially with like a street circuit setup, which is what Sebring is, basically, and maybe that's just not working well for them. And it's WC, so how often are you going to be having to focus on a very bumpy circuit setup like that? So I don't know. It could be a factor of both of those things, but yeah, I think the Porsche just had a little bit better BOP this run, and they played the weather probably a little bit better in their favor. So
yeah, and as well, it was a great battle between the Porsches and the Corvettes. The start of the race though went a bit pear-shaped for Porsche. They were both on the front row of the grid, and both cars picked up a 15-second time penalty for a start infringement. Effectively, they left too big a gap between the GT field and the LMP field, or the prototype field. Kris, what was your read on that? Do you agree with the penalty?
I'm going to be honest with you. When I was watching the race, I don't think I even know that happened. I don't know. Was it leaving too big of a gap from the prototype start? 15-second penalty? I don't know. I mean, I guess they want to have strict starting procedures, which it makes sense. But I'm gonna be honest with you. This is probably the first time I've heard for penalties regarding for keeping a decent enough gap between the starting group. So I don't know. I don't know how to feel about this one.
Yeah, I'm actually just watching the start through now, and what it did mean is that when Porsche came through for their first pit stops, they basically relegated themselves a change of tires behind the Corvette in the early stages, and it doesn't actually look like there's a huge gap. But I think the thing is as well is that the GT field was kind of forming up behind them still as they came to the line. In fact, the first prototypes are heading into turn one as the GT cars come out of Sunset Bend. So it felt a bit off to me, but it was almost immaterial in the end because of the safety car interruptions and the red flags and all those sort of things. One thing I do want to pick out though, driver of the race for me was Nick Tandy in the Corvette. How good is Tandy behind the wheel of that Corvette, guys? He was just absolutely monstering that thing. The fact that he was able to keep the likes of Christensen behind him for so long and then make pace later on the race on a different set of tires, it was just awesome to watch.
The battles between the Corvette and Porsche were so entertaining to watch. That was the definite highlight of the GTE Pro class, that race. I mean, it seems like it was. I remember very early on in the beginning, that was pretty much what the cameras were focusing on, and it was very entertaining. And hopefully, we get the same thing for Spa. As we all know, Corvette raced at Spa last year. That was Oliver Gavin's last race. Little tidbit. And so they have the they have the auto BOP, right, for Spa.
So we should see an adjustment for the Ferrari to come a bit back to the field, hopefully, maybe, perhaps. Great racing in GTE. Great racing GTM as well. Pretty well marshaled all race by the Northwest AMR number 98 crew, who at one point was leading a Aston Martin 123 before the Team Project 1 and Dipsy Proton Porsches started to come back into the mix. The number 98 just looked untroubled all race. Is this finally Paul Dall'Anna's year? He's had one GTM championship, but has come close to winning GTM and winning Le Mans a bunch of times. Is this finally the year?
He could also maybe win Le Mans too.
Fingers, arms, legs, toes, and eyes crossed for that.
We'll have to have this discussion once he doesn't crash at near the Porsche curves at Le Mans. That's something that sticks out in my mind for Paul Dall'Anna, because for some reason, I know it probably doesn't happen as much as I think it does, but it seems like Paul Dall'Anna, or at least that car, and like between the Porsche curves and the Ford chicane, it's just like a cursed zone for them.
Yeah, so fingers, arms, legs, toes, and eyes crossed, that doesn't happen. GTM was good. We're running out of time here, so we're not going to focus on it too much. I do want to say, though, it is kind of fun to see guys like Ben Barnicoat and Giancarlo Fisichella just like banging doors at every single opportunity in GTM. The fact that those kind of guys are racing in an AM class is just kind of wild.
I mean, what's dead may never die. If they're talented and can bring the car home and pretty quick, and maybe provide some exciting competitive racing, they're going to get stuck in the car. So
brilliant stuff. We'll move on from there's one last thing I want to talk about the WEC, and we've kind of left it to the end of this discussion because it was a bit of the elephant in the room. So the end of the race was aborted about an hour ahead of time because of lightning strikes in the area, and Eduardo came across the radio and said that as part of the law in Florida, they have to halt the race for the safety of the quarter marshals and the patrons, because of lightning strikes. Like that's part of the law of the state. They can't do anything about it. Cookie, you were at the track. What was your read on the weather situation at the end of the race, and do you think that the race could have continued had that law not been in place?
Yeah, I mean it's an acceptable risk. So it's a determination of an individual's opinion on what is safe or not in terms of lightning. So, like there's especially in the U.S., the Florida is lightning strike capital of world. Like we just get so many lightning strikes a year with just how the storms pop up, especially in Florida. So we have really unique weather conditions that make lightning very, very common, and the conditions for lightning very, very common. So I know in the Midwest they do have like lightning detections from like a proton electron ion thing in terms of like if it gets saturated in the air, it like for parks and stuff, there's alarms that go off telling people to seek shelter. There's potential risk for lightning or something like that. So our NFL, pro football, U.S. football has same stuff too for their stadiums. If there's lightning strike within like I think 10, 15, 20, like I think it's like 12 miles of the stadium, they stop play. They have to go off the field, and they try to like get as many people off the field, like out of the stands as possible. And then that counter resets every time there's lightning strike. So I mean, I've been to a bunch of football games at the University of Florida that have been lightning strike delayed for like an hour and a half, and we're sitting there waiting for the play to resume and just kind of cursing the sky and hoping not to get struck by lightning after that. So, all to say that I think it was appropriate. It was fine because that's a safety thing, so I'm not going to bother with that. And I think, too, it probably wouldn't have been as controversial had the rain that was to our north, south, east, and west of us at the time actually hit the track, because it was very close around us. There was tons of lightning. I mean, it looked like it was going to downpour, but the radar on my screen didn't look like it was going to rain. It just looked like it was off to the sides, but I don't know. Stuff with lightning can strike 12 miles away from where, the storm's at or something like that. So, it's frustrating because it's like, it's a weather thing, but in the worst sense that it completely stops everything, even though everything's fine, and it's just a complete random chance that somebody could be struck by lightning. But we've had some people die at racetracks in the last 10 years at a NASCAR event too in Pennsylvania, and so lightning is taken way more seriously at motorsport events specifically because of that.
Yeah,
that happened in Pocono.
And I guess as well the fact that you've got like metal cages, bridges over the track. You know, the marshals are in like effectively metal boxes, which, you know, isn't necessarily conducive to safe operating. There's a great concern there, and it kind of sucked that we didn't get the grandstand finish that we were maybe hoping for in a few of the classes. But as you said, it is a safety issue, and that must be like it's part of the law of the state. You can't just disregard the law to keep a race going when there's, you know, potential for safety in the air. I think what you said there about the fact that the weather didn't actually ever properly arrive made people a bit extra frustrated as well. Kris, you were watching. I remember jumping into the live chat just at the end of the race. What were your thoughts as a external observer?
It was quite a shame to see it be more controversial than what it actually, you know, should have been. Because I know in Europe, and I don't know if they do it in Australia, but I know in Europe, South Africa, you know, they race and there's lightning strikes all over. Does that mean that it's okay? Well, that's gonna be definitely a opinionated answer for people, that's for sure. But yeah, and I know some Europeans were, you know, frustrated, saying that the law was only to protect people from getting sued, which is, you know, sort of correct. Basically, it helped cover the race. So, you know, it was just frustrating because basically as soon as that red flag hit and we didn't get the finish, a lot of people came to look America bad.
Yeah.
It's yeah, true. Okay, so was the law made? Yes, it was because someone died at a racetrack at Pocono, and people took action on that, which we glad they did. But it was also because after that Pocono incident, the family, I would presume, sued the racetrack and NASCAR, and so basically, to protect, to not have any of those in the future, you know, they just made the lightning rule, which I prefer it than people dying, but it was just frustrating because I know like Europe and the rest of the world does it, but it was just frustrating, honestly, because a lot of people were mad, you know. It was U.S. bad. It was just
it kind of came a bit toxic there for a little while, which was unfortunate. Yeah,
it was like it's something that happened. It's like, let's see.
I mean, international motorsport events have been postponed for lightning in other countries. I mean, Malaysia's had it lightning postponed.
Oh yes, Malaysia.
So I mean, but like it's just, this is a product of being in a tropical environment, climate, and that's what Florida is, and especially now in the summer or in the spring, like we're getting more. It's usually around that time when you get the dry season, but there's that weird like transition from winter to dry season, kind of getting hot in Florida. That like you get some rain, you get some weather, but they've been more, you know, like they've been more thunderstormy in the last few years than recently. A lot of times it would just be rain and you just get some rain and then it would dry out. But now it's been like thunder cells.
Yeah.
And again, like if this was in Washington, where it just is usually just wet, rainy, not lightning and all that, and they did this because there was potential for rain in the nearby area, and they thought maybe there'd be lightning, it'd be different. But especially with Florida and the way it is, and it is the lightning capital of the world, like they do not mess with it at all down here. So,
and if I can make one more point, I noticed that because people were making the points like, "Oh, it's for safety, you know, get the marshals out and, you know, get everybody protected." But I mean, it was kind of because the drivers were out in the open. I remember them standing grid. Does that excuse what am I trying to say here? Does that mean there's like, oh, look at what they're doing, and also the spectators, they're out in the open. That means we should go race. That doesn't mean that. And I want to point out something. If being a red flag, right? If there's a red flag, that would probably mean more spectators would go to shelter, because if you continue to have the race running in green flag conditions with potentially lightning in the area, how many of those people would you think go to shelter?
Yeah, not many, if any.
So that's one point I know people are kind of I think we're missing out on. Yes, just because the fans they're out in the open, maybe they didn't really have a place to go. Maybe with the red flag, they could have just went back to their cars, and just hide out with someone in a camper, or anything else than being out in the open, instead of having the race ran in green flag conditions and potentially having more people out there being exposed.
Yeah. So we're all pretty well in agreement that it was the right thing to do in the end, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, not even a question. It's just protocol. So yeah. I mean, it's frustrating from a fan standpoint to not see it go back to green. It's and it's the same thing that why NASCAR is now does green white checkers and all this other stuff. They make a lot of this stuff for the entertainment of the fans, and this is one of those things where it's like, as a fan of this sport, you gotta you gotta choose whether or not that being very official and precise in pretty much everything else in this sport extends to specific safety protocols, especially when it comes to inclement weather and the safety of track officials and the marshals. So their safety comes first before anybody else, including as well as the drivers. So it's just from that standpoint, they don't have a choice, and there's no point in really complaining about it outside of, all right, I'm complaining about it because I want the WC to have at 20 minutes. If anything happens in 20 minutes, you reset it to, or within 20 minutes, you reset it to 10 minutes and let them all race green, for a 10-minute sprint. You could do that, and that's really the only argument you can make. But this one is just it's so clear cut. It's not even worth an argument, honestly. Like, it's just not. It's very cut and dry. So
fair enough. Glad we got that out of the way. At the end of the race, it was, as we made mention, the Alpine that was leading the way. I don't think anything changed too much under the safety car or the red flag at the end of the race, so there wasn't any late race shenanigans like there was at the Road Atlanta race that year that Porsche won, where all the DPs pit first and lost all their positions. But glad to see that all went without a hitch. If you're following plenty of motorsport series like I do, you've probably run into trouble with calendars, time zone conversions, and most importantly, missing the start of racing you want to watch. That's why I use the Racing Line app. The Racing Line is your customizable motorsport calendar, giving you up-to-date schedules on all the racing you care about, with all major motorsport series covered. Use the day or week view to check out what's on and plan for those busy weekends ahead. The Racing Line allows you to set customizable notifications for events, giving you enough time to get yourselves ready for the racing you want to watch, or for me to get the race threads ready. Plus, it's all converted into your local time zone, so there's no getting caught out by bad mental maths or daylight saving changes around the world. Find out more at theracingline.app or search The Racing Line on the iOS store. Thank you to The Racing Line for sponsoring this podcast.
Oh, IMSA.
Oh, IMSA.
IMSA, yeah.
Let's talk about IMSA then, and I'll be 100% honest here. I did not actually manage to watch much of the IMSA race, at all. It just fell at a really bad time for me, and I haven't had a chance to catch up. But what I do see looking at the results is I see the top 5 cars on the same lap within 30 seconds of each other. That end of the race must have been something else.
Yeah, they ended up being pretty damn close to each other at the end of the 12 hours, especially since they almost had near 5 hours of green flag running to the end of the race. So just for them to be that close to each other is a testament to how the regulations have gone. And honestly, the fact that they've had 2 to 3 stable types of machinery that just have not had problems or have had funding issues and withdrawn outside of some of them, but yeah, it's just you can see the benefit of having stable OEMs, especially with the stable regulations. Like IMSA has done a very good job with it, and DPI continue to excel with that. So, and good to see the competition between the DPIs still be very, very close. So I think all of them had a shot to win.
Yeah, so there were 5 in the lead in the last stint. I'm looking through the results here, and talking about Earl Bamber rushing through basically the last stint and passing for the lead after getting a drive-through penalty late on in the race. Kris, what was Earl Bamber's last stint like? It must have been something else. Again, something else.
Yeah, so he was basically really, sound like a 5-year-old child. I almost sound like a 5-year-old child there. Really faster. He was much more faster than the the JDC Miller car. I remember, I believe he passed him coming out of the corner onto the back straight, coming up the inside. I think maybe he roughed him up a little bit and basically just drove off ever since. In LMP1, DPI was, as you said, was pretty close. I mean, anytime you look up from your timing screen, there'll be someone battling for position in DPI. Basically, unfortunately for the 01 Cadillac, basically right from the get-go, they had a gearbox issue, which I think might have been the same issue they had at Daytona. But yeah, they never really fully recovered from that. So very unfortunate. That same car did end up winning at Long Beach the next time around, so they got some redemption. But obviously missed out on a boatload of points there for the championship.
Yeah, they got hurt pretty bad at Sebring.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks that the Cadillacs with the car to be in though at Sebring, the top 3 in the podium, all Cadillacs. Did it look like the Cadillacs had the pace throughout the race, or was it something that happened late on that they just seemed to find a way with the conditions cooling off and the sun going away that they managed to come to the fore?
It's been 5 years. I feel like I am the most broken wrecker when I say the Cadillacs are the best chassis in IMSA by far, and it's just a question that they just have a better baseline to start from. If their neutral balance is 0.3 faster than the Acuras and 0.4, 0.5 faster than Mazdas without some help, then even if they get BOP down to their level, they're still they're driving well under the limit of their car, whereas the Acuras and Mazdas are clearly, I feel like they clearly have to be driven on the edge of their limit in order to beat the Cadillacs. So, and I think the bumps certainly help the Cadillacs, and it does help them at Long Beach. It's just, it's just a thing we see over and over and over again, and it speaks to the importance potentially of more Joker updates or the actual legitimate, authentic use of implementing Joker updates, or having some system where you can try to limit the advantage. Because, and that's ultimately why Peugeot aren't entering Le Mans early, and that's probably why Ferrari are going to take their time, and Toyota were taking as much time as possible, because you just try to get it as quick as possible and as neutral as possible, so you can get BOP down to other people's level and just drive away from everybody. So Cadillac has done it for 5 years.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
It seems that
I'm bored. I'm bored with IMSA DPI, man. I'm so bored with IMSA DPI.
It's just a caddy show.
Thank you, Chip. Thank you for coming back. I love Chip Ganassi. I mean, just the Grand Dam Rolex, 24 series, all that stuff with him, excellent. But God, man, I'm so done with seeing those Cadillacs. I am just fed up with them. So
you have to pay the Cadillac tax.
I mean, we're going to see him again. It literally feels like I'm treating him like the Mercedes of IMSA, where it's like, please tell me they're going to pull a Mercedes next year and just be terrible. I don't even want that either, because they're probably going to go to Le Mans. And I remember the last time they went to Le Mans, and it's so painful, even though there's been so successful, I'm annoyed with them that I still feel guilty trying to even bring up their North Star effort, whatever that was. That was an abortion of a car. So you know what? I still want them to lose, but man, it's you can't. It's a Cadillac DPI. It's gonna win everything.
Cookie, I think that's the most fired up I've ever heard you about the DPI class and about Cadillac. Are you okay?
Yeah, it annoys me because clearly Toyota and Porsche, you could go back and forth to say like which one was better. Probably the 919 was a little bit better, but the Toyota could beat it handily on a certain track or like with good conditions. Like it definitely had the legs in certain places, especially sometimes at Le Mans, but couldn't finish. Cadillac is just it's been the better chassis. And no matter how many IMSA fanboys want to just sit there and tell me that IMSA DPI is the best category since literally bread was invented thousands of years ago, like it's just the Cadillac is the best car, and IMSA's been doing very good things to try to keep that thing under control and allow the other manufacturers to feel like they have a decent shot at winning. Because, like, honestly, that it's just the best chassis. It's just the best, and I wouldn't be surprised either to hear Mr. Wayne Taylor himself make some weird comment about like Cadillac or like something with the regulations for next year. Some comment about how good the Cadillac was for the entire stint of current regulations. I don't know. Anyway,
it'd be weird because Wayne Taylor currently uses Acuras.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. It's just like I feel like even though he got that win, like last year, and they're not terrible in the Acuras. I just feel like performance-wise, like there's definitely places that they just are, that they're going to see the difference. They're going to keep realizing the difference between the Cadillac and the Acura, no matter what the BOP was year to year. So
I was going to say Acura did win the Rolex this year with Meyer Shank. So, and Cadillac, 2 on the board, Sebring and Long Beach with both Chip Ganassi actually. So we'll see. We got at the time of recording this podcast, we have Laguna Seca in a week's time, the first actual sprint race, like 2-hour 40-minute format. So we'll have to see what comes after.
Acura wasn't too bad there. They're not bad at Mid Ohio either. I'll give them that. They're actually probably better at Mid Ohio than Cadillac is.
Probably because it's like an actual sort of racetrack and not a speedway or a bump fest or a street circuit.
Well, then explain Petit Le Mans.
I don't want to. You can't make me.
Okay, all right, fair. You know what? You pulled that card, and I have no defense for that.
No recourse.
Right. I can't ask you. Yeah.
So after that explosive outburst about the Cadillac in DPI, what about the Oricas in LMP2, Cookie? What are your thoughts and feelings about that?
Screw DPI, man. Screw DPI. It's ridiculous. I gotta talk about LMP2. Yeah, we'll talk about the one maker rate because they're probably more entertaining than ELMS's LMP2 category is by far and away the way more entertaining category than DPI IMSA. Like, get out of here. Okay. The only thing that IMSA has going for it is just the fanboys that are like holding pitchforks trying to kill the other people that they're racing against, like, or the other fans of the other teams that they're racing against in DPI. That's it. So it's like Cadillac fans trying to murder Acura fans, which don't exist. That's the only reason that'd be interesting. But it's not.
Oh my god, this is brilliant. Far out. Okay. Let's. Cookie, I'm very happy you got this off your chest. We'll leave it there, okay?
It's like, I feel like this is the equivalent of your Sebring outburst. Whenever we talk about tracks, like it's not even like, okay, well, what track is located in North America? Oh, it's Sebring's located in North America, and you know what? It sucks. Where did that even come from? You just asked a question. It had nothing to do with how bad the track is. You're just like, I hate the bumps. It's terrible. It's the most pointless track in the world. You're not wrong, but like, it had nothing to do with what we were talking about.
Oh,
Cookie, God. We do charge by the hour.
Wait, you guys are getting paid for this?
Yeah.
No wonder Cookie goes on long-winded rants all the time.
Well, LMP2 was awesome because Ben Keating won.
Yay!
Yay!
Yeah.
With Mikkel Jensen as well, which is cool.
Kind of like the clear. It was like the winner from the get-go. Really, you look at that car from the entry list, like, oh, Keating, LMP2, IMSA. Wow, that's a lock.
And
Team Netherlands has been doing better this year, and kind of how I thought they were going to do last year. But yeah, they weren't a match for PR1, especially Keating's still is on top form. So
and Mikkel Jensen's also in that
yes,
car.
yeah.
Oh god, yeah, yes.
I think as well, like, you look through the LMP2 field in IMSA, and I think the fact that they've got a more AM focus than they do in, for example, the ELMS and the WEC. So it's nice to see the AMs get a bit more airtime, but it does separate the field very quickly by the quality of the AM. And yeah, as you said, Ben Keating and Scott Huffaker are just a much better pairing in terms of AM drivers than Fritz van Erden and Dylan Murray, and like, that's just... You can't really outdrive that if you're Guido van der Garde, especially if you're going up against Mikkel Jensen, who might be... Well, he's going to Peugeot for the LMH, isn't he, Mikkel Jensen?
Yep.
Yeah, so, a future LMH factory driver. So it's a bit hard to overcome that in terms of LMP2. GTD Pro, Corvette Racing taking the win. How do we feel about Corvette's GTD participation? Clearly that car is made for GTE regulations and has been balanced down to fit into a GT3 spec field. They didn't win by like a huge margin, but how do we feel? How do we feel?
Oh, Kris can go because I've been talking a lot, but I have some thoughts on this too.
Okay, we'll let Kris go first, and then we'll give the floor to Cookie.
I personally don't mind it because I know it's just a stopgap for their GT3 car. So for the next 2 years we're gonna see it. And as of right now, because my concern is that they're either gonna make it too OP or nerf it completely. It doesn't look like that's happening. Obviously, Daytona, first ever race with the GTD like trim on it. So I wasn't expecting, Pulitzer winning awards here. Sebring, I think Mirko Bertolotti with the TR3 Lambo, like they weren't off by a lot. I think they had a decent battle. Maybe not towards the very, very end, but I believe they had a battle somewhere towards in the night. And then I don't think they won Long Beach. I think Heart of Racing did with the Aston Martin, and obviously, I would be remiss. Corvette was one of the reasons that Pfaff had to retire because a wheel nut that came off the Corvette went into the radiator, like the open spot in the hood of the Porsche. That it went into that part of the Porsche for Pfaff.
And punctured the radiator, and they caught it on camera as well, and it just exploded.
That was Long Beach Pacific, but yeah, I think it's fine for right now. I don't see any issue with it because it's a stopgap, basically, and I think it really created this unique situation where Corvette, were finally got into a full season of WEC because obviously they still wanted to race their GTE car.
Yeah.
In GTE spec, like they're not going to let that money go to waste, and so I think it's fine. It's another car on the grid. It allows Corvette to stay in IMSA because no Corvette in IMSA is sacrilege. It can't happen. So I'm glad it's there.
Okay, I agree with your last point that no Corvette in IMSA is sacrilege. Cookie, very briefly, what were your thoughts?
I hate it. No, it was good. I think it's fine, and I think this is another segue from our previous conversation of a superior performance car being reduced in performance to a lower category in order to match it up. So I think the car, there might be some awkward moments where it's not designed to go that, with the tire or something. As it's designed, but for the most part, it's probably set up to go a little bit faster than now it's running, and pegging it back in certain ways is going to affect how it drives. But for the most part, I think their operating window is probably going to be the highest in the GTD category. And the problem then becomes, because GT3 BOP is so perfect, quote unquote, it's very difficult for cars to constantly keep passing each other. and vying for position. A lot of it is just processional sometimes. So if you do truly peg back Corvette because they probably do have ceiling potentially with their color race weekends, if you peg them back even a little bit, they might get heavily impacted, put back in qualifying, and not be able to pass anybody.
Yeah.
So I don't know. This might get more tricky as the season goes on if Corvette constantly is at the front all the time. And with Long Beach, it could have been another case of like, oh, Corvette's now on a streak. How much is Corvette going to win? But that wasn't the case. So we'll see. I think it could get tricky. Yeah. But at the same time, I think they're doing a good job.
This isn't the first time IMSA's dealing with something like this. Because remember, when the series merged, 2014, they had Z4 to deal with, to put in with all the GTEs, and then they had the M6 GT3 to balance with the GTEs. And because IMSA is more manufacturer driven, they had a BMW team, Ray Hall, Letterman Lanigan, big IndyCar team, that was there with BMW for the American Le Mans Series for a while. They had the car, they had the money to pay. So they found a way to let them in because, that's 2 less cars on the grid and one less manufacturer. So, and I think from memory, they didn't do too bad of a job dealing with that. So I don't think this Corvette situation is going to end up differently.
Yep, that's a pretty astute observation. Well done, Kris. I tend to agree. GTD, great result for Ceslar Racing, taking a victory in the GTD class at Sebring in the 12 hours. And Kris, you were telling me earlier they did it the hard way. They didn't have it all their own way, and they managed to pop out at the end in a very good position.
Yeah, so around 6.5 hours left in the race, they kind of had an incident where they went into the tire barrier in turn 1. They managed to drive off on their own accord, although their rear wing, they got caught up a little bit in the tire bundle, and when it finally released, they kind of had a little boing, bounce back and forth, reverberated, and it was quite funny. I want to believe it was Giorgio in the car when that happened. But basically, after that, whenever Fuoco was in the car, he, just like his last name in Spanish, he was on fire. He amazing stints from him. Controversial incident regarding him and the BMW of Turner. I believe it was turn 5 where Fuoco was, basically went to the inside, probably, he was probably way too far back for the move, and basically touched the left rear of the Turner car by like the rear wheel and kind of turned him. So people, kind of got a little mad at that, but obviously, since they're involved in that full course yellow, they dropped back, but they had the full course yellows, the safety cars, and the wave rounds to catch back up to the lead lap, and they had to work for it. They had a great, I think the last hours of the race, they had a good battle with AF Corsa, and I don't know if it was shown on camera, because at night they kind of forget that GTD exists.
Classic.
But it was a very, very interesting race in Chedalar. If you weren't following the timing screens, you weren't even aware of the progress they're making, unfortunately.
It's one of those things about being in a lower class is that sometimes you do just get forgotten, which is a shame. But I do love the personalities of Chedalar Racing, and the fact that they've come through and gotten another win, another big win, is pretty damn exciting. They ended up winning by about 49 seconds over the Gilbert Korthoff Motorsports Mercedes of Skeen, McAleer, and Juncadella. And then AF Corsa, as you mentioned, Kris, ended up in 3rd place. We talk about the IMSA caution procedure plenty of times. In this instance, it's given an opportunity for a team that has had an incident to get back into the mix and show their pace and get back on the lead lap and win a race. Is this the... I'm trying to pick my words very carefully here. Is this the reason IMSA operates like that, to keep more people involved? And is that a good or a bad thing?
I think it's definitely like an American thing because IMSA very really reliant on its TV deal, and if you want more people to watch, you want to keep the races close and exciting. It's clearly, obviously, because you have WEC and all the other series. They have full course yellows. They try to minimize the impact that any race interruptions can bring. IMSA, now, yeah, I agree. Sometimes they can be a little bit, they can jump the gun, so to speak, on full course yellows if a car simply just, stops on track for like 5 seconds, and then, as soon as the full course yellow button gets hit, they just, resume on track. But, some people, it's kind of a yin and yang situation. I think if they could find out a way to shorten, because I do understand, because I believe the prototypes and GTs have to pit at separate laps, just to avoid a very, very clustered pit lane safety. Then they have the wave around. It's kind of yin and yang, because you do get closer races as a result, and the finishes to these endurance races, they always, they never really disappoint. It's just the middle of the race it can be a chore to watch, because you finally get green flag racing, then it'll be full course yellow for another 15 minutes. So it kind of ruins the groove of watching the race. And that I kind of wish they'd had less full course yellows. Just maybe use actual like slow zones and do it the European way. And use the safety cars where it's absolutely necessary. Then do the whole wave by. I think it would make it'll be the best of both worlds. It would have the Europeans be a lot more happy, I think, for less interruptions, and then you'll still have the TV crowd having maybe not as close races, but closer races than the European counterparts.
Your comment there about IMSA sometimes being a bit trigger happy with full course yellows and throwing them for maybe reasons that that can be resolved a lot quicker than having a full safety car procedure in the pass-bys and the pit lanes and all that sort of stuff. Something I noticed in the WEC race was the amount of times that Eduardo cancelled full course yellows when cars got going. I think there was 2 cars that kept stopping out on track. One of them was a GTE Am Ferrari, and the other one was a LMP2 car. I think it was the Inter-Europol car that like would putter around for 150, 200 meters, come to a stop, and then it would look like it would cycle through the electronics and then restart and get going again. There was a few times where it looked like it was going to have to be recovered, but Eduardo called a full course yellow approaching, started the countdown, and then cancelled it mid-countdown when the car got going again. So it was very interesting to see the difference in philosophy from the WEC side, where Eduardo was very happy to cancel full course yellows if things resolve themselves, versus what we have seen in the past with IMSA. Final thoughts, lads, on the IMSA race and Super Sebring weekend. Cookie, at the track, what is it? 20 hours of racing? Is the Super Sebring the way that Sebring should happen? Is this the way forward for IMSA and WEC as a shared weekend?
Too much racing, man. Too much, man. It's fine.
It's fine? Is it fine, or is it great?
I mean, I don't know how else you would kind of do it and be able, because I thought it was fine and I could keep up with it, okay, but apparently every other person couldn't in 2012 when they tried to combine all of them. So clearly, I'm the only person out of everybody that actually enjoyed that race, and
yes, actually, because it was a cluster again. F.
Yeah, and I was fine with it. I could keep track with it. What, you guys can't keep track of numbers anymore? Is that like we're in sport? We're sports car racing fans. How in the world Do you can you not keep? We keep track of the Nürburgring 24, and they have like 40 different classes. What are you talking about? It's not that hard. Anyway, so we're clearly never going to go back to that, even though we should. So we're stuck with this, and WC clearly wants to participate in the North American event that is 12 Hours of Sebring. Like, it is, in terms of a sports car race, Jesus, I don't, Nürburgring 24, maybe, levels, outside of Le Mans, so anybody that's affiliated with sports car racing, if they've never been to Sebring and go to Sebring, they're like, I want to take all of my stuff and throw it at Sebring. So, this is all just the culmination of just, the only choice you have. So... Yeah. I don't know. It probably could work better back-to-back weekends or something in terms of logistically, but you wouldn't be able to get all the fans to come back for each one. So this is the best that they can do. Maybe they can move the Sebring race to Sunday, but that's just asking crazy amounts for people. Maybe it would be cool to do it where they were originally going to do it, where they were going to start it at midnight, run it to 10 or something, 9 a.m., have the race end, and then start the 12 Hours of Sebring. That would be awesome. I would love to see that. Otherwise, this is great, to answer your question.
You got there in the end. I'm proud of you.
I am gonna get a lot of hate for this. Have a WEC. So see, I am in the mind that we should harken back to the good old days. I think we should have a WEC race at Coda, maybe in April, a couple weeks after Sebring.
Ooh.
That way you can, because when the classes, when convergence happens, I would think you would have more top teams willing to do the actual 12-hour, the prestigious one. Because with the WEC race, obviously they're going to focus on the WEC. That's the championship they're in. If you don't have the WEC race that same weekend, you might entice some more WEC teams to come over and try at the 12-hour, which that's what happened in the past with Audi and Peugeot. So I'm more in that kind of mindset, because I would like to see Peugeot come back to Sebring for the 12-hour. Toyota, if they want to have a crack at it. I would like to see that happen.
Yeah, that's a good point. We do have top class convergence happening next year, so there is a possibility of a few of these teams doing either double duty for the WEC or crossing over. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with this event in the future. That's all from the Super Sebring weekend. We do have just the European Le Mans Series opener to chat about at Paul Ricard. First thing I want to say, holy crap, what a good race. European Le Mans Series turns it on. Guys, is the European Le Mans Series the best sports car racing series at the moment?
Michelin, the Cup series, Michelin Cup.
Yeah, Le Mans Cup.
No, yeah, Le Mans Cup. Yeah. That's really good too.
That is really good too. Is it better than ELMS though?
No, I don't think so. The Michelin Le Mans Cup was still good though.
Definitely worth checking out. Watch Michelin Le Mans Cup, but ELMS, oh my god.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I mean, the whole weekend was great. So the Michelin Le Mans Cup was great, and yeah, ELMS. I was actually planning on because I missed watching it live. So usually with that, I'm like, all right, well, I'll watch the whole thing, and then maybe fast forward through some full course yellows, that kind of stuff that I don't need to watch it. But I ended up watching probably 3.5 hours. So I mean, it was a great race.
Did you watch the end?
Yeah, I mean, no. I just in total, I didn't do very much fast forwarding. I was pretty much watching the whole thing. So
it was an absolute.
Yeah, it was a great race.
It was an absolute, just smorgasbord of a race. You had stuff going on in every single class. It got really messy at the beginning. There were 3 or 4 safety cars in the first hour and a half, which split the strategies into pieces, and we basically spent the whole rest of the race trying to piece together where everyone was in relation to each other. And come the end of the race, in 2 of the classes, there were last lap battles to the line, and it was a phenomenal climax. Where do we want to start in terms of the last lap sort of things? We'll come back to LMP2 at the end, but where do we want to go first, lads?
Let's start from the bottom up. Let's talk GTE first.
Yeah, so GTE, it looked for the early part of the race that the Iron Dames were in a really, really good position. Sarah Bovey in her first stint was just passing cars for fun and got to the head of the field. But then they started to fall back a little bit, and it was the Rinaldi racing car that ended up pushing its way towards the front ahead of the pair of Proton competition Porsches. And the battle to the line between Jimmy Bruni in the Proton competition Porsche, and I think it was it Gidley in the car at the time, or was it Verone?
No, it was Verone.
It was Verone in the car at the time.
Yeah.
On failing tyres up against Jimmy Bruni, his defensive effort in the last 15 minutes of that race in order to hold Bruni behind, and in the last 2 laps, Bruni was right on his bumper. What an absolute, just incredible way to start off the season in GTE rather.
Yeah, GT was an amazing fight the entire race. Like, just battles everywhere, and very good, clean racing, a lot of storylines, great AM drives, great pro drives. And then, at the end of the race where it was that close at the end, it was a culmination of a great 4-hour event, especially to start the season.
And Rinaldi Racing taking, I think that's their first victory in the European Le Mans series. Is it their... Pardon me. Is it their first race win in ACO competition?
They might could have they won Asian Le Mans, because they were in that last year.
That's true. They were in the Asian Le Mans series, so it's not their first race in what am I trying to say? ACO competition. But it was still a bit of a surprise. You look through the field in GTE, and you got your likes of your Spirit of Race, your Kessel Racing, your Iron Lynx, your JMW, your Protons, those big names that have been around for ages. And Rinaldi have kind of come from the SRO side of things. So for them to be immediately on the pace and winning races, and like the return of Mamo Gidley as well, like storylines are plenty in that. It was quite a surprise for them to be so well matched, in my opinion.
Yeah, in Memo Gidley, because elephant in the room, his 2014, I believe, Daytona wreck, where he absolutely just slammed into the back of a Ferrari. I don't even remember how long he was in the hospital. It was a very, very long road to recovery, and he didn't really start racing until like a year or 2 ago. It took him that long. He started doing small stuff like the United States Touring Car Championship, which is basically like a club series out west that just calls themselves the United States Touring Car Championship in a Corvette. Oxymoron, very confusing lines in that statement. Then he raced GT America with Bentley, which was, I believe, helped run by Flying Lizard Motorsports. And now he's coming over, and I believe he raced LMP3 in IMSA, and now he's doing ELMS. And I think it would be safe to assume that would be his first European Le Mans Series win. It's absolutely a great story, and also being as an American, very awesome to cheer for an American driver that isn't controversial or problematic.
Yep.
It was a nice story, and the fact that Verone just held off Bruni that hard, because Bruni didn't really get to the back of him until 3 laps to go.
Yeah.
So at least he didn't have that stress, throughout his entire stint. But I couldn't imagine what it was like behind the wheel.
It was an epic display of defensive driving, and they had basically another full lap once the LMP2 and LMP3 drivers crossed the line, because they were just ahead of the leaders, which meant that it was a bit like the battle in GT rages on. So they got basically the full last lap to themselves, which was quite exciting to watch. I want to put out a big shout out as well to the first podium for this driver in ELMS competition, Michael Fassbender. He got a podium with the number 93 car with Zachary Robichon and Ricard Leitz. He was on point through the whole race, and at one point he managed to pass 3 GT cars down Le Mistral Straight just by getting a great run through the traffic that was passing him. As the other cars got balked, he looks like he's found his feet in the GTE car. He did have a spin, but this must be good for the fans of Fassbender. It's going to look great when they do the Road to Le Mans documentary. Is this the year that we see Fassbender at the front of the field taking race wins, and do we see him at Le Mans?
I think we see him at Le Mans. Taking race wins, maybe. He still had some spins. He got up to third in class and then spun, dropped it down to 10th at one point. So, he definitely is looking more confident behind the wheel. So whether that interprets to sustained confidence, we'll see. It's all good and positive signs. I mean, I think we're all talking about how good he could potentially be and how much can we look into how well he performed here. If we're talking like that, especially about an actor turned racing driver, that's not a bad assessment for your first, kind of real foray into the competitive side of the field in the class that you're in. So just a round of applause to him for that effort. I mean, it's taken a lot of work, and sure, it's been documented by Porsche along the way, but he's not driving in slouches, so it definitely is was noticed, I would say. And
let's think about this for a second, because you mentioned he had some spins early on. What if he didn't have those spins? That car finished like 8 seconds off from the lead. So it doesn't surprise me because Zachary Robichon and Ricard Leitz is in that car. Both very good drivers, because if you remember, Ricard Leitz doesn't need no explanation. Zachary Robichon won the IMSA GTD championship with the FAF last year. If Fassbender can clean up a little bit, you know what? Sound the alarm, championship contender.
Absolutely.
Oh.
Absolutely. And in a very, very good GTE class as well. I do want to correct myself. It's his second podium in ELMS competition. They took second place at Algarve in the season closer last year. So this is a continuation of some very, very good form for Fassbender, picking up the third place. A shame for Iron Lynx. They just dropped off the podium. And then there were a few hard luck stories through the field. I think JMW didn't have the best of races. The second Rinaldi car didn't have all that good a race, and one of the Oman TF Sport cars got bonked on the first lap and was recovered by a quad bike to get pulled back to the pits, which was a little comical.
That was hilarious.
Yeah. That's peak ELMS, right? Recovered by a quad bike. Let's talk about LMP3 next, and again, a huge field in LMP3. A bit of attrition as well. Problems for the Cool Racing car that got pitched into the wall after Seine Corner, which was a bit scary, but the driver there managed to get out unscathed. Euro International had an absolute shocker, but the story of the race really was the last stint battle between the second Cool Racing car, the number 17, Matt Smith. I don't recognize these names by the initials, which is a bit amateurish of me. My apologies. It is Mike Benham, Marta Jakobsen and Maurice Smith battling to the line with the Inter-Europol car of Charlie Cruz, Guillaume Oliveira, which I know that I've messed up saying his name, and Nico Pino. Went down to the last lap, got all the way to the very end of the race. I think the Cool Racing car made the pass on the last lap of the race, but it was all immaterial in the end because the number 13 car got disqualified, which was unfortunate. Leaving that aside, great battle in LMP3. Great to see LMP3 class get a bit more exposure in that sort of light. Is it a worry, though, that it's only effectively the Ligier in LMP3? Are we seeing an Orikification of the LMP3 class?
Yup.
Yeah.
I heard multiple times about them talking about, you know, and it's a good thing what ELMS, especially the broadcasters, are doing to try to also encourage more questions on some of the streams and stuff to get it more involved. But a lot of it was like, well, what's the difference between LMP2 and LMP3? Oh, well, you know, are there different chassis LMP3? Like, what are they? So they're talking about it, and it's just kind of this like elephant in the room. They're not really like, they're like, oh yeah, the other two manufacturers, Ades and
Duquesne and Ginetta, yeah.
And you're like, oh, okay, all right, well, like, you know, it's the same kind of thing, and I don't know. I mean, we might see the Duquesne show up at some point. Well, not the Duquesne, but the Ades. We might see that, but I mean, there's one Ginetta running for the last 2 years. That's pretty much been it.
Yeah, and well, the Ades is not at the same level as the Ligier, the Ginetta, and the Duquesne. It is a little disappointing to me to see that the Duquesne hasn't really gained a lot of traction with customers. The Norma that preceded the Duquesne seemed to be a good alternative choice to the Ligier, but it seems that has not continued with the upgrade to the LMP 320 regulations.
Yeah, I think there was a moment in time where people were thinking, okay, well, Norma's bringing in a different chassis, and, you know, for the time that it was for the previous regulations, you could tell that Ligier seemed to be better than the twisty bits, Norma was better than the straighty bits. And so I think there was that part of it where, okay, fine, Norma is not to the level of Ligier at the time when they started doing the MP3, you know, in terms of the thought process, but, you know, that they would still be able to provide a superior product, and they'd be able to beat Ligier. So, but I think over the last 4 or 5 years, it's been hammered home just how consistent that Ligier is, how better the product is, because they just have the overhead to supply all these teams with all the parts necessary for it. So I think you're seeing a lot of that being like, okay, we might have run Norma before, and now they're Duquesne, and they still probably have a decent product, but if everything's evened out, and, you know, even if they might have a slightly better chassis, but Ligier has better everything else, I'd rather run Ligier. Yeah. I think that's what we're seeing with this.
And that's a very good point, because it kind of reminds me, in the rally scene in the United States, there might be better cars out there, but a lot of people go with Subaru because they have the parts, they have a much better support system. You're going to have an easier time running with them. And another point, I want to say, unironically, the most diverse LMP3 lineup right now is in Prototype Cup Germany, which is a newly launched prototype series that's basically only LMP3s for now. But you had like 2 Ginettas. Conrad was one of the customers racing them. Then you had a few Duquesnes mixed in there as well as the Ligiers. And there's an article on Daily Sports Car saying, well, there's some teams, you know, they have the cars. We might as well give them somewhere to race where it's low pressure, get themselves more familiar with the cars before they make that step up. So maybe with time, we might see some of those more. Maybe we'll see a little bit more diversity on the Michelin Le Mans Cup / ELMS grid, you know, with these teams from Prototype Cup Germany that aren't already in the series.
That's a great point, and we'll keep tabs on that. I'm sure you will, Kris, and you can relay that back to us throughout the seasons coming and see where those drivers and teams have come from. That it would be nice to see a little bit more variety in P3 and in P2, but of course, we have seen the convergence of the Orica 07 as the dominant platform. Speaking of P2, it was a really, really good race filled with battles, but to me, the fact that the strategy calls through the safety cars in the early part of the race played into an entirely different set of options at the end of the race is what I love about European Le Mans Series and sports car racing. And you've got to say, what an incredible result for not only the race winners in Prema Racing doing a WRT, taking their first race in the European Le Mans Series, but also Algarve Pro Racing, a dual silver lineup, Sophia Flörsch and Bent Viscal, coming home in second place through some great strategy and a shortened last stint which placed them exactly ahead of third place in the Panis racing car. Algarve Pro Racing, we ripped into them a bit last year through a series of like pit lane mistakes, strategy mistakes, driver management mistakes in the European Le Mans Series particularly. But this is a great performance by the family-owned squad, and it's an incredible sign of what might be to come from those guys in the European Le Mans Series and in the WEC. Guys, what can you say about Argyle Pro Racing and that dual silver lineup winning a second place?
The field looked really good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very good run for all of them. But yeah, I was mainly rapt about, maintaining or at least seeing how Sophia was doing, because it was, I don't know. I think that's I think I'm ready for. There's been so much of emphasis, especially on women drivers and stuff like that. I really want to see one of them really start to break through and have good runs, feel comfortable, be in a good spot in the team, and potentially compete for wins. And I think, this is this is good signs for them, because I think there's more to be had here if they can continue this success. So, but great to see them have a podium.
And I think there's some good omens out there to that, because not sports car racing, but in TCRs just in the last couple of weeks, Jessica Hawkins won in a TCR UK race that supported the British GT Championship, and that field was around 20 cars. And then you had Jessica Backman just yesterday, at the time of this recording, Saturday, ADAC TCR Germany, winning that race. So already a good year so far. Hopefully we'll see some more success, especially out of the European Le Mans Series. Maybe Iron Dames can grab out a solid result. Just hopefully, because I think the Euro, because if you remember last year during Le Mans when the Richard Neal team had an incident, I believe the Eurosport team didn't really exactly help favors. I think they made some jokes about haha women drivers. That's basically the simplicity of it. So hopefully we'll see some good results, and who knows, maybe we'll see Sophia Florschan and Le Mans winning LMP2 in the near future.
That would be quite a step up from where they are at the moment. I mean, like, a great way to a great performance from the team. I think I'm trying to find the explicit analysis. I can't really find it at the moment, but I remember seeing somewhere that the difference between Bent's times and Sophia's times were effectively negligible. They were basically the same driver running in the car over the course of their stints, and that was their consistency that was able to propel them up the grid, as well as being on a slightly different strategy to give them that clear air to run in that consistency. So a great work by Argyle Pro to put them in that position. And yeah, it's great to get representation of women in motorsport, whether that be driving or in the teams or in the media or in the as the engineers as well. There was a few comments that the commentators focused on a few of the engineers in the Iron Dames team, like pointing them out and saying the whole point of the Iron Dames program is to show women and young girls that this is a viable career path and to bring those people into the sport, which I think is a very important thing. So good job, right. ELMS, and good job Iron Dames and Argyle Pro for promoting women in the sport.
Right, and Giddy Tire has that same program at the Nürburgring. They have, I believe, there's a TCR, and then there's like a GT4 where it's like an all-women crew. So it's not just the ELMS, not just ACO. I'm glad it's being paraded in more different series now. Two things I would actually like to point out.
Yeah.
During the race, the United Autosports LMP2 22 to be exact, had a 9-lap stint, then mysteriously went back in the pit road. We didn't know the issue for the longest time. Confirmed during the week, it was because of a puncture. That's why they had that short stint on track. We could have been seeing a very more different. We could have seen a different result than what we would have had here if that problem didn't arise. Another thing, so the TDS car that started on pole position Matthias Besch and here, um, Vanderhelm.
Yep,
They
Timon
were the
Vanderhelm.
they were the two fastest drivers on the grid. And then as soon as they handed the car to Simodomo, dropped like a rock.
That is the beauty of Pro-Am Motorsports, though, isn't it? In the end, they finished in 10th place, and they were the third car in Pro-Am, but that is, part of being a Pro-Am team and part of having a bronze driver that you have to tutor and carry through a race. And, the fact that Simodomo was given the opportunity to race at the head of the field for a little while, that would have done huge things for his confidence and his ability, and it's all about these baby steps. Like, remember, it would have Fritz van Aert was this driver that we were talking about losing huge amount of times, and he's one of the most consistent bronzes going around now.
And I would just put new name that I would assume many people have not heard before, so probably his first time in such a big race like this. I believe he was also slowest on the table as well, so it was kind of just a yin and yang thing for that team. They had the two fastest drivers, but unfortunately, the way the cookie crumbles, they had the slowest one as well.
Yeah, and I guess that's just part of how racing goes, truth be told. A pretty exciting race overall, though, to start the season. Pretty exciting race in all three classes, which is what you want from a European Le Mans race. Had a bit of drama, had battles all the way to the line. Next round for the ELMS is at Imola, which is a racetrack we've seen European Le Mans Series before, but not for a few seasons. Imola's a circuit that's renowned for being very difficult to pass. What are we expecting from the European Le Mans Series at Imola?
I mean,
bonkersness.
Bonkersness?
Yeah, the last time we went there was, I believe, 2016. And that was the year when basically the entirety of the last hour was ran into full course yellow safety car because of a huge deluge of rain. Try not to swear. a huge deluge of rain just absolutely showered the track. I trying to remember who won that one. I believe it might have been Thierry by TDS. Speaking of the devil, Ryo Hirakawa was part of that team. Just one of the drivers that just stood out in my memory. But yeah, so hopefully we'll see a green flag finish this time around. Unfortunately, it kind of clashes with a lot of other sports car races that weekend.
Yeah, let's talk about that briefly. So that's the ELMS. That's the 15th of May. Also on that weekend is GT World Challenge Europe, I think.
Yep, Magny-Cours, the sprint.
Also on that weekend is the Bathurst 12 Hour, which I will be at, which will be the first time I'll be at a racetrack for 2 years and a bit, so I'm very excited about that. There's other racing on that weekend as well. Isn't IMSA on that weekend as well?
Yeah, IMSA,
Mid-Ohio?
Mid-Ohio.
Yeah, that's going to be a stacked weekend of racing there for the 15th of May. I did say it. I had to say it.
And OT, but it's related. MotoGP will be at Le Mans that weekend as well.
Oh, cute! That is always a good race for MotoGP as well. So that's plenty to look forward to. WC at Spa will be soon as well. Whenabouts is the WC at Spa? That'll be the 7th of May, so 2 weeks' time.
Yep, and that same weekend, as long as we're here, there'll be the Nürburgring 24 qualifying races. There'll be a 3-hour race on Saturday evening. I believe they're running it towards the evening hours, towards the night. Then they'll have another one on Sunday. Basically just a ploy, fans haven't been around a lot, so we're going to give them more on-track action in terms of, more practice and qualifying for, both of the days. So, that's basically the only reason why they're doing the split format.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you get Spa WEC, which only clashes with like an hour of the qualifying race on Saturday. And then you get another 3-hour dosage of the Nordschleife on Sunday.
And yes, it's important to note that the Spa race is on the Saturday, so don't mess that up. So we'll keep everyone abreast of that. We've already made mention IMSA at Laguna Seca this weekend. That's the next period of races coming up. Guys, thank you for being back. Thank you for coming back and doing this. It's been too long, and hopefully life can sort its doo-doo out and we can do this more often again, because bloody hell, I've been missing doing this.
Yeah, we can keep doing this.
What's coming up? I'm sure we'll be in the booth plenty more times before that.
Absolutely. And in this as well, thank you for coming back and listening. And thank you to our sponsor, the RacingLine.app, your motorsport calendar, for sticking with us as well and not pestering me to keep making episodes, because shut up, it's been hard, okay? But very, pardon me, very appreciative to have their support again this year. Make sure you get onto the Racing Line to plan out your motorsport watching adventures, because as we've made very clear, there is a lot of stuff happening very, very shortly in the world of motorsports. Guys, soon we'll be talking about Le Mans. It'll be 6 weeks that we'll be talking about Le Mans and the 24 hours. And yeah, doesn't that just make you a little terrified?
Time moves too fast.
It moves too bloody quick. And on that note, thank you very much for listening. I've been Michael Zalavari on behalf of Austin Zetzman and Kris Washer. Peace out!
Gazoo! Say Gazoo noises because they lost the Sebring, but Gazoo!